Welcome to Chicago Style Parenting, where we delve into parenting life in Chicago and uncover the resources, information, and support that Chicago families need. I'm Amy Johnson, the Executive Director of Neighborhood Parents Network. Today, we're talking with Amy Liss. Amy is a founder of Chicago-based Campus Integrity Group, a specialized consulting firm aimed at addressing and preventing staff and student misconduct in K-12 schools and other youth-focused organizations. Amy and her co-founder, Amber Nesbitt, formerly led the nation's only independent body dedicated to K-12 sexual misconduct investigations, overseeing more than 2,500 cases across the country's third largest school district, our very own Chicago Public Schools. Welcome, Amy.
Thanks, Amy.
So let's start at the beginning. Tell us about your work. What is Campus Integrity Group?
So, like you said, Amber and I led the Chicago Public Schools Sexual Allegations Unit. And the more we came across cases, and mind you, our cases were anything from my teacher looks at me creepy up to, full-fledged sexual assaults. And we, as the only independent, we could not figure out how other schools were doing this type of investigation. They didn't necessarily have the resources, the support, the proper training. And often it would be a superintendent or a principal of a school. And, even unintentionally, there's some type of conflict of interest in that. So we decided to leave CPS and take what we've learned and take all of the experiences that we've had and the training that we received and take it nationwide. So now we're working with schools, youth-serving organizations, attorneys, families, anybody who really needs assistance kind of navigating that process.
It's really amazing that there wasn't a group like yours before this for each school district across the country.
Exactly. So now there is one.
It's great. Why is this work important to you?
Again, as realizing that schools weren't necessarily prepared to handle this type of, incident or misconduct. I mean, student safety is the number one. Well, not the number one, obviously. We're looking for an education, but student safety is really important for schools and teaching them what to look for and teaching them prevention strategies and making sure the schools are doing everything right. Even, most schools have well intentions, but it's hard to do that when you don't have the resources to do it. So, we developed a passion for just wanting to make sure that students are safe in a place that they're supposed to be able to trust the people around them and feel comfortable and, go every day with a smile on their face. So we just wanted to make sure that these kids were getting what they deserved.
That's great. So you're supporting students and families by really supporting the schools and learning how to manage this type of investigation and look for signs and prevention. Is that right?
Yeah. Schools for sure. Families sometimes if they're not sure how to navigate the process. And then again, attorneys, sometimes this is not their specialty. Sometimes they don't necessarily have the time or, again, the knowledge to do some of the due diligence required. So really, at this point, whoever needs our help, we want to help.
Anxiety, big feelings, tough transitions. We help kids build regulation skills and coach parents with tools that work. Located in Lincoln Park, amyzier.com. That's right. It's anyone involved in this situation.
Right.
Well, for the purposes of this podcast, since we're talking to parents, we will talk about, we'll have a discussion that really supports parents and helps educate parents in this process. So to dive right in here, I think many of us know that sexual misconduct often starts in small, innocuous ways called grooming. Can you give us an example of how that sometimes begins and who it can affect?
Yeah, so it really affects everybody. It affects the whole school community. It obviously very much affects the student. It affects their family. It's not an impulsive act. It starts very slow. It starts with trying to build trust with the student through such things as, it would start as, "Hey, can you come to my room for lunchtime today? I want special help." Or, "I'm gonna drive you home from school today." Or, "Here's a gift. Don't tell anybody." Preferential treatment, things like that. And over time, it builds up and they do everything they can to sort of isolate the child. And then it turns into maybe a hug. And then it turns into maybe something more than a hug. And the goal ultimately is to build enough trust to be able to sexually abuse a student or a child, period. So,
It makes me cringe just talking
uh,
about this.
as it should. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of people associate grooming only with strangers. How common is it for grooming to happen with someone that the child already knows and trusts?
So you'll be shocked by this number. I will say, and I'm probably aging myself and possibly you, I apologize. Um, but it's, we all learned stranger danger, right? We learned about the person in the van offering us a lollipop or the guy at the park with a bunch of balloons or, the guy walking behind you who suddenly needs help with his groceries, things like that, or the female behind you.
Yeah.
And 93% of child victims of some type of sexual harassment or sexual assault, 93% um, happened by somebody that they know and trust.
Right, because 'cause they're already willing to get close to
Right.
that person, help them out.
Right. And the trust is already there. Right. So, I mean, we trust our teachers, we trust our neighbors, we trust our family members. So, you already have this sort of starting point when you know
Yeah.
the person that's involved, and vice versa. I mean, like you said, they already trust you. So, it's kind of step one of the grooming process, so to say, is kind of already covered.
Ugh. Ugh. Alright, well, what are the early warning signs that grooming might be happening? In other words, what should parents, teachers, or other adults be watching out for?
There are a lot of signs both in the groomer, the perpetrator, and in the child.
Yeah,
So again, the signs of the groomer are just like I said, forming some type of special relationship with the student. And there's a lot to that. And sometimes it's really hard to recognize, right? Because it's
yeah,
really hard to distinguish care and concern and mentorship for inappropriate behavior.
yeah,
So a lot of times it's really just about trusting your gut. The little hairs on the back of your neck stand up. You're very familiar with the policies and, you're hoping that other people, even if the child themselves doesn't recognize something, that other people feel empowered to report something that just seems a little fishy or off. For parents at home, there's a lot of signs, but I'll give you some examples. Really, they're all sort of revolved around changes in behavior. So I feel like I'm giving like the side effects that you hear on TV because it goes both ways, but it's just a change in behavior. So, they're a
yeah,
regular eater, but suddenly they eat much less or they eat much more. They are big talkers in your house, but suddenly they seem to be a little more secretive or a little quieter. You might get a random gift or a card in the mail, or they might come home with a gift from school that's sort of unexplained and unexpected. It's not a holiday, right? It's like,
yeah,
why is my kid bringing home? I mean, there's been things from jewelry and headphones and, all the way down to a pack of pencils. Um, yeah, like a very much increased secrecy. They're kind of hiding what they're doing. Their bedroom door is suddenly closed. They they talk about this teacher excessively and how much they enjoy them and how much they like their company. So really just anything that you're sort of noticing that is atypical. And it could be nothing, right? But better safe than sorry.
yeah. That's so hard because kids, as they grow and develop,
Right.
their patterns change anyway, and their
Exactly.
personalities develop, and they do get more secretive as they get older, maybe
Mhm.
secret more private as they get
Yes.
older, and parents are have left to decipher this.
Exactly. And that's the hardest part. So,
Yeah,
like I say, if you're feeling like something isn't right, very
yeah,
possibly something isn't. And even if you're feeling like something isn't right, but everything's fine, you still want to bring it up and you still want to report it because you just never know.
yeah. Uh, um, what about online? Online grooming, we know, is a growing concern. What does that look like? How is it different from in-person grooming?
Offline grooming actually happens faster. Still
Oh,
not, nothing happens overnight, obviously, but it's
yeah,
really easy to develop a relationship with somebody online. You
yeah,
you use the same gaming platforms and chat rooms and social media. You can put a picture up that, is of a 13-year-old boy or girl, but you're really a 50-year-old person. So, and you can isolate them. You can make them feel really comfortable and trust you. And, all of a sudden you're best friends and then they want to meet at the park or, again, they start sending things to your house. It's kind of the same signs, but much faster. And you'll notice things like your child will be on their phone, but when you walk by, they'll turn it upside down. Or they'll be on their laptop in their room. And as soon as you enter, they shut the screen really fast. And, again, just sort of atypical behavior that you're not used to. If you have a family computer, there could be, you could look at the history of the links they were looking at, and some of them could be very unique and very different and could even potentially leave up these chats on their screens. So it's different, but it's, the end game is the same.
yeah. And some of those other behaviors of receiving gifts at the home, um,
Yes.
there are other patterns of behavior changing, like how much they're eating or how much they're
Exactly.
talking. Uh,
Exactly. I'll tell you something crazy.
yeah,
They and I didn't even realize this, until I continued to kind of train and work on prevention strategies. They often use, it often gets to the point where they're saying, "Send me some photos," and I'll send you a photo, and so on and so forth. And first of all, as you know, they big issue right now. They can take that picture and turn it into anything they want, right? And
yeah,
then you're at the risk for potentially being, shown in some type of child pornography. But
right.
also, they often use those pictures to bribe or blackmail these kids. And then they're terrified of talking about it. They're embarrassed. They feel shame. They don't understand how they got themselves into these situations. But
Yeah,
it could be send me more pictures. It could be send me money, send me gifts. So a lot of times the purpose of that is actually grooming, but also blackmail.
yeah. I mean, that would be hard to admit if you got
Yeah,
yourself into that if you got into that situation. Uh,
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
But these kids are being manipulated, so
Of
it's
course. Yeah.
they
But
should be
you're a
able to.
kid
Yeah, yeah,
and
that
you don't
right,
realize that, right?
right, right. Um, what makes it so hard for children, like we're saying, to not recognize that they were being manipulated, that grooming was happening to them, or even adults looking back who maybe went through that as a kid? Why is it so hard to identify it?
So many reasons. One is they just haven't been educated on what to look for. And two is, like we mentioned earlier, they very much trust this person, right? So when they feel special and they feel privileged and they feel like, they're the best of the best. And that's why this person or teacher, since we're talking about school, or teacher, coach, whoever it is, right?
Mhm.
Administrator, anybody and anything, um, they feel like somebody cares about them and they feel like, what kind of kid doesn't want to feel special? So, and then it often turns out that they really like this person. Sometimes they think they're in love and they don't want to get the person in trouble. So even if they sort of realize, maybe this isn't totally appropriate, but it's okay because they love me and I love them and we have a great relationship, and we're going to live happily ever after. And then again, there's the shame, there's the embarrassment. I think somebody will be mad at me. People are going to think it's my fault and all of the above. And sometimes it takes adulthood and different types of experiences and reading about things and learning about things to realize like, oh my goodness, I think I was groomed in high school, right? Or
Yeah,
elementary school or anytime.
yeah,
There's actually also surprisingly a lot of delayed disclosures, which is what we would just say for, adults coming forward way after the fact and saying, I've had a bad life. I haven't been able to keep a job. I haven't been able to keep a relationship, alcohol issues, drug issues. And at some point they might step back and realize, or therapy or whatever they're doing, and they might realize like this is because of what happened to me when I was younger. And you know what? It's about time I do something about it.
Merlin Day Academy is a therapeutic day school for kindergarten through 8th grade. Private insurance coverage or IEP placement available. Call 312-312-7525 today. Do they do adults who realize this and report this so many years after? Is there justice for them? Do they get like justice?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
Sometimes, absolutely. And sometimes, the later it is, it's a lot harder to find witnesses and
Yeah.
students that they went to school with and just people to sort of corroborate their story. And that doesn't mean it has to necessarily be corroborated, but it's really hard when it sort of becomes a he said, she said, and that's with kids, with anybody involved. So yes, and a lot of times they'll still have screenshots, social media posts, photographs, and anything like that is huge.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but we had a case that something happened in 1999, and it
Mm-hmm.
was, that's 27 years ago. So, you could even find class rosters and yearbooks and go on Classmates and all the research you can do.
Yeah.
But do people really want to talk to you 27 years later? Right? It's
Right.
hard. It's hard
Right.
to kind of get to the bottom of those types of delays. And the longer the delay, the harder it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, okay. So, given all this, how should parents be talking to their kids about body safety and boundaries? And how does that change as kids get older?
It cannot be a one time conversation. No,
Yeah.
first and foremost, it has to be an ongoing conversation, and it does change as they get older. You can't talk to a 6-year-old the same way you can talk to a 16-year-old, right?
Yeah.
So when you have a younger child, it's more about these are the parts of your body, and you should always use the actual real terms. So even if somebody calls their private part their woohoo, whatever you want to call it, you call it what it is. So you
Mm-hmm.
teach them, their body anatomy, and you just kind of explain to them this is your body, and other people don't get to touch it, and other people don't get to take pictures of it. And if anything like that happens, please tell mom or dad, and we'll always believe you, and we'll always try to help you. And then as they get older, it becomes a little more about consent and about how people can touch you and when they can touch you and why they might touch you. And you just kind of get into further detail. And by the time they're, 15, 16, 17, you're really bringing up the digital grooming piece of it. And not
Mm-hmm.
only are you talking about it as far as what to recognize in adults, and you can go over way more red signs at that point because they're old enough to sort of understand how these things happen, and they can understand, the word manipulate and the
Yeah.
word, they get it a lot better. But, and you could even talk to them at that point about how they treat other students, right?
Yeah.
And it's when you're teaching consent and when you're teaching inappropriate behavior and no means no. So you're just developing the conversation into more and more detail as they become more and more able to sort of understand the process and what to look for and what to do about it.
Yeah. We did a podcast episode a few months ago about online safety, and a lot of that language also, um, a lo- some of the advice that I took away from that discussion was to let students or children know what's legal and illegal,
Hmm.
to
Yes.
send online, and that might be part of this discussion as well.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, being 17 or 18 and big obviously in the internet world, because
Yeah.
that's changing every second of every day, and it's so hard to keep up with, and there's new legislation all the time, and there's lawsuits about what you can do on websites that you shouldn't be able to do. And just because the kids are getting older doesn't mean it's obviously okay or more acceptable, right? So
Right.
you still got to look for the same types of signs, because just like if you were in person, they love having this attention. They love having, this kind of secretive little relationship, because like you mentioned earlier, they love their privacy now. They love their autonomy, right? And they
Yeah.
want to continue to build on that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, and you know what? A lot of schools have a really hard time keeping up with, this new world of
Yeah.
digital communication. Either they're just older and it's a different generation. And I mean, there's things, sometimes I have to show my kids something on my phone and say, what app is this? Like, what social media network or platform am I using? I
Right.
remember when we worked for CPS, it was I was one of the oldest, not the oldest, but I was, in the older group, and there was a
Mhm.
lot of younger, obviously, kids. I would almost say kids, but there were a lot of younger people than me. And I
Right.
remember I was talking to one of them, and of course, in a group of other people, and I said, "The Snapchat." And to the day that I left, I had never lived it down. So, I mean, case in point. And
Right.
so a lot of these schools don't train for it properly, and they don't really know how to prevent it. And again, it's not because they're not well intentioned. They just you can't keep up with it. So it's very hard to explain to older staff members, don't talk on the phone with kids, especially because probably 20 years ago they were allowed to, right? Don't
Mm.
use personal emails to talk with kids. And even if you're on GChat through school, be careful what you're saying. Like, you don't ever want to give the wrong message, because even the perception of something going wrong or being wrong, that's
Yeah.
just as bad as, well, nothing is just as bad, but I mean, that's bad. Like, that's when people
Yeah.
start thinking you're maybe up to no good. And it's a lot of times they just don't really know.
Yeah, I was thinking more, when you're talking about schools can't always keep up, I was thinking more as a large bureaucracy. Like, it's hard for one individual parent to keep up on
Oh
all
yeah,
of the technology, but you're talking about kind of the generation, the age of the adults in the
hmm,
school, not even bureaucratically, just individually. These
right,
individual adults interacting with their kids, um, don't always know what risk they are taking if
right,
they are messaging over GChat or saying, I have to
right.
call you because you left a jacket in my classroom or
Exactly,
whatever.
exactly. And it's hard to teach prevention strategies on something you don't yourself understand.
Yeah.
Um, and that's part of the reason why it is such a global issue, and not United States, global. Right?
Yeah.
This is like a worldwide concern, because the internet's everywhere and you don't have to be in the same place anymore. You can be in Australia and I could be in the United States, and you could still be grooming me online. It doesn't matter where we live. It crosses borders. There's no, you don't have to be in the same zip code anymore. So, I
Yeah.
mean, that's hard to, accept and understand.
So, Amy, knowing all this and knowing that you are a mother, how do you how do you get through your days without freaking out all the time? All the time. Like, how do you manage this knowledge and how can I, without all of that background knowledge, manage my panic?
Okay, don't panic. Like, number one rule, do not panic. Uh, and I always, that's such a good point. The goal is not to make people nervous and, to be on such high alert that that guy's going to do this and that woman's going to do that. And, that's not the goal. It's just to recognize sort of the simple basic signs. And in theory, you're with your kids a lot,
Yeah.
right? They're in school probably half of their lives, and then they're with you the other half. And so you'll notice a difference. I mean, it's not like you have to, watch them every day with your binoculars. You raise them, like, what you're looking for, right? And
Right.
it's not, the goal is not to be paranoid, it's just to be knowledgeable about it, right?
Yeah.
And so how do I deal with it? My poor kids have probably heard me talk about this to them 7 million times.
Yeah.
Um, but that's better than seven, right? It's definitely
Yeah.
better than one. So, just talk to your kids and trust them and trust in yourself. And, again, trust that kind of gut feeling that you have, and make sure that they understand. And even when they're little, you could talk about it. You know, Michael, if you feel little, butterflies or weird feelings in your stomach, let's talk about it. Because that
Yeah.
might mean that you're uncomfortable in a situation that you don't know really how to recognize or bring to my attention. And, again, we're always here. So, yeah, I mean, the goal is not to, it's scary, right?
Yeah.
But if we go through lives thinking everybody's going to groom our kids, or, everybody you look at as a perpetrator, we're going to all end up in padded rooms one day.
Chicago Children's Theater's Red Kite Project, offering classes, camps, and residencies with unique and innovative programming for youth on the autism spectrum and their families. I feel like you've already um, answered this, but what's one thing you wish more people understood about grooming that doesn't get talked about enough? Maybe you haven't
Um,
answered this.
I would say parents and caregivers get groomed too.
Oh,
So the goal
interesting.
is not just to gain the trust of the child, the goal is also designed to gain the trust of the people that take care of this child, right? Because if, you know,
Oh, yeah.
so they'll call you and say, your student is doing amazing. And I'm so proud of them. And, if it's okay, I want them to stay after school. And so I could give them some private tutoring because I know that they're going to excel in this subject. And it could go all the way to, Mr. Smith, your kid told me that your profession is painting and I really need my kitchen repainted. Is that something you'd be interested in? Or I'd love to take your child to a movie. We talked about this movie in class and they were so excited about it. So they're also, trying to get you to really like them and appreciate them. And that way, the more that they sort of do in this relationship that develop with your child seems okay.
Oh, that's interesting. Of course that happens. I hadn't thought
Right.
about that piece though.
Right. And then you don't really recognize the signs. And then you generally do interpret it as my kid is doing great and the teacher appreciates it. And this teacher's amazing. And it doesn't matter what type of accolades that teacher has. And it doesn't matter how well liked they are in the school. I mean, there's been cases with Golden Apple Award winners and teachers of the year. And this teacher's been here for 20 years. There's no way they could do anything wrong. But you don't know what anybody's thinking, behind closed doors. You don't know. Everybody says, my neighbor would never do something like that. He's such a nice man, right? But is he? I
Right.
mean, you just never know. And again,
Right.
please don't panic. That is not
Right.
to scare you. It's just to bring awareness and education.
Right. So parents have to keep their spidey
Yes.
senses alert
Yes.
as
Yes.
well. Right.
Yes.
Like teachers, they have their own friends. They don't need new friends. They don't need you to be their best friend.
Exactly. Exactly. And
Yeah.
they certainly don't need your kid to be their best friend. So,
Right.
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 And that's again not to say every time your kid comes home from school, did anybody touch you? Did anybody say anything inappropriate? Did anybody show you any pictures? Any inappropriate jokes? It's not that. It's to just make sure they know that if anything happens that makes them uncomfortable, just generally uncomfortable, let's talk about it.
Yeah. Right. Right. You definitely don't want to um, make children afraid of all the adults around them. You want them to go to
Exactly.
school feeling
Exactly.
comfortable and safe. So
Right.
you just have to keep that conversation open. Easier said than
Exactly.
done, but you've given us some
Way
good.
easier said than done. It's uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
It's like your birds and the bees talk. You got to kind
Mhm.
of do it at some point, but it's uncomfortable all around.
Right, right.
So,
Yeah. Uh, is there one thing that parents can do today to help protect their child from this type of violence or give their child the agency to protect themselves?
I mean, honestly, again, just talk to
Yeah.
them, right? Have a
Right.
conversation. Make sure they feel empowered enough to report something to the school or talk to a trusted adult.
Mhm.
Um, Talk to a family member. Talk to your parents or your caregivers first and foremost, right? Just make them know that you're there for them and make them not be scared of the world, but to understand that sometimes things happen and you want them to know that it's okay to talk about it.
Yeah, really keep those lines of communication open, and there's
100%.
a lot of resources that we can go to help us figure out how to have those difficult conversations.
100%. Yeah. And even just, you know, you're out to lunch with some friends or you met for a glass of wine one night. It's okay to say, and again, it's not anybody's favorite topic, but if you're worried about something, it's okay to bring it up with your friends and just say, like, what do you guys think of this situation? Should I be concerned? Am I being crazy? Right? I mean,
Yeah,
talk about it. It's
yeah,
it's it's uncomfortable, but it needs to be talked about. It can't go away unless people, bring it to the forefront of their attention. Not every
right.
day, not every second, but it's all about awareness and education.
Yeah, and that's how a lot of parenting worries get resolved, right? As we ask
Yeah,
our friends who are parents, there's a lot of they're experts in parenting as well. They've been doing it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
everybody has their own expertise, right? You have a maybe your child is way older than mine, and I say, "Hey, he's starting to stay out past curfew. Amy, what should I do?" And
right.
maybe you have a perfect answer for me because you've been there before. So
Yeah, yeah. I doubt it, but we muddle through together.
that's right. Exactly.
That's right. Oh, thank you for talking with us today, Amy, about this difficult topic, but we've kind of set the stage. If we can listen to it and we can talk about it with adults and with our friends, we can talk about it with our kids and and just keep our kids safe and keep ourselves
Yeah.
aware.
Well, hopefully it didn't scare you, but it's an important topic. So, and thank you for having me.
Yeah. Yes, of course. We're so grateful for this conversation. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Listeners, we hope you enjoyed this episode and learned a lot. Tell us what else you'd like to hear about and who you'd like to hear from by clicking the link in our show notes. Hit the subscribe button to stay in the loop, and we'll see you around the neighborhood.